Welcome back to the secret underground lair. We're going to take our tabletop, unclamp the tabletop, and then we'll get ready to glue up the shelf. That's our project for today. So I'm going to put you on time lapse while I get all this undone. And then I'll show you some things that I was thinking about when I glued up this top that I failed to mention as we glue up the bottom. So here's our top glued up, and a couple things I wanted to point out as I was cutting and assembling this. You may have or may not have noticed I was making a bunch of pencil marks on the pieces as I was taking them off the table saw, and other times I'm marking them up. So a couple of the obvious marks that are on the table is I have lines that I've drawn across here. That's simply to help me align the pieces when I'm doing glue up. So I kind of get them roughly fitted where I want them, then I'll draw a line across it. Then when I take it all apart and put glue on the piece, I know exactly where to put the piece back together because I have all these lines to help me line everything up. They don't have to be perfectly lined up, but it's the area that I want them to be in. The second kind of set of marks that I make on them is I label every piece. You know, like this one is 2A, and I put a 2B on here. So I have 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1A, that's 1B. This is piece 2A, piece 2B, 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B. Just to kind of help me keep things straight and organized as the pieces coming together. Finally, the thing that I did as I cut the pieces through the table saw, as a piece is going through the table saw, I have the blade, of course, sticking up in it, and I have the fence. I try to keep this blade, of course, at 90 degrees, but there's a chance that it may be off by half a degree, a quarter of a degree. It's not an exact science, which means that if I cut a piece this way, or cut a piece through here, take a second piece and put it through here, when I put those two pieces together, because they're not exactly 90 degrees, they'll have a tendency to tilt, or they could tilt. However, if I have a piece that goes through on this, take an edge that went through the blade on this side and match that with an edge that went through on that side, when they come together, this one may be 90.5 degrees and this will be 89.5 degrees, but when I put them both together, I have a perfect 180 degree plane. So as I put a piece through the saw here, I will mark the top edge that's against the blade as the A side of the cut. And the other side here would be the B side of the cut. And then whenever I'm joining pieces together, I will always want to match an A with a B to ensure that I get a perfect 180 degree plane. I never want to join two A sides together, or two A cuts together, or two B cuts together. So it's always an A to B. So those are the pencil marks that I make as I cut things. Just thought I'd share that little bit of information. All right, let me lay up the bottom portion, the shelf for the table. We'll get that glue up started. Gonna have to go through the same exercise of kind of trimming off the ends. But first we'll get a general layout of how we want these pieces to be. This is going to take a little bit of sanding now, obviously. I seem to have a bit of a depression here. This piece seems to have waned off right here, so I may do a little bit of repair work in here, but we'll see. And I get a chance to pick which side I want to use for the top. Right now I'm thinking this side, but subject to that repair work. So, but I'll set this off to the side for now. We'll get the shelf set up for glue. Okay, so this piece is going to have a little bit more variation in it, and I do have a bit of a challenge. This piece has a bit of a warp, so we're going to have to probably going to cut this and rejoin it and join it together again, because that does have a bit of a warp. You can see that. So to get rid of that warp, we'll cut this in the middle The other thing I have with this particular piece is there are some cracks in the piece, so I don't want to have that running all the way through, but I will cut off a portion of it, glue this together before we do our joinery. This may require passing it through the table saw one more time. But I'm going to glue that now and get it set. Similarly, I have another piece here. It's got a crack. I'm going to cut this off way back here, but that crack does extend, so to keep it from spreading, I'll put some glue in here and clamp that as well. This one's not as bad as the other. Let me get a little bit of glue on that and clamp it up, and we'll carry on with the layout. Yes, I am using my finger to put this glue in. In this case, what I'm trying to do is force the glue into the crack, and my finger, I find, just works really well for that. I get a much better feel for what's happening. Maybe I get a bit of a gluey finger, but that's okay. That's what pants are for. A chance to seep in that side. I'm going to also apply glue from this side. So I'm putting a clamp on in this orientation so that when I apply pressure on this clamp, the piece doesn't slide up and out of the way. There's a little bit of slippage, but it's not as much as if I don't do that. That one set for a little bit. And do the same practice on this piece. Okay, those two pieces will be good. Now we'll just focus on the layout of the shelf. So to that end, I'm going to remove this plastic because I've got glue on it. Okay, now I want this piece to be 50 inches in length, so I start by figuring out where is 50 inches on these pieces and assume I'm going to cut something off. So for example, down at this end, I do have a nail mark here. I want to cut that off, so I'm just going to come back about 3 or 4 inches and make that first cut assumption. So if that's the end there, when I get down to this end, I need to have a piece that's 50 inches. I need to come to about here. I have another pock mark that I can get rid of. So I'll mark about 3 inches there. I'll take this piece. I'd like to get rid of that nail hole so we get a perfect bit from here forward. And that would come out to about, well, I'll add another 2 or 3 inches on this end. So we'll cut it there. That means this piece is going to be 1A. This piece is going to be 1B. So 1A will have a cut here and here. 1B will have a cut here and here. Sorry, here. Means I have a little bit left over. If I need to use that elsewhere, I can use that elsewhere. So we'll just kind of go through the same thing with the other pieces. On this particular piece, this is the one that's warped, so we're going to cut it in the middle. I want to cut off that end, so this will be, and then we're going to cut off this end here. We have a good piece here. Just going to cut it off right there because there's some planer snipe we can get rid of. Again, figure out our 50 inches roughly. So 50 inches would get me about here. So that's good. So we'll make that cut there, that cut there, this cut here, that cut there. Which means if I cut this off about here, I still have lots of wiggle room for that final fit. Which means then that this is going to become 2A, this is 2B, this is 2C. So I've got 3 pieces on the second row. So now I can just kind of work with the table saw and cut these pieces off to get the rough jigsaw puzzle that will form the shelf, which will cut to a final fit once it's all glued together. So I'll get set up on the table saw. I'll come back when I'm ready to make these cuts. Okay, I've got every piece lined up. I went through and double checked to make sure that I have the kind of A side on top, and I have marked where I want to be cutting even this cut, an A or B side going through the blade, just so that when the pieces meet on a butt joint in the middle of the panel, I'm not going to have any gaps. So I've got pieces marked, ready to cut. Still letting these dry, set up with the glue. So we'll probably come back and do those a little bit later, but let's start with these guys. just a quick little note about one of these cuts that I made. So piece 2 was warped, so I cut it in the middle to get rid of that warp. Now as it goes through the saw on my first pass, the piece is kind of sitting like this. So I make that cut, goes through. Of course this is an exaggerated motion, but now what I've got is this cut here is not going to be perfect 90 degrees when it's flat. So that's why I made a second pass with the piece down on the table. Now with this piece flat to the table, this is going to be a perfect 90 degree, and when these pieces come together in a butt joint like that, the warp is gone and I have a perfect fit. So just a little quick note on why 2 passes on a couple of these pieces. There were actually 2 pieces that were warped, one way more than the other. That's the one that I noticed first. The second one occurred when I was cutting it, so I thought, well, I'll just make that cut and get that straightened out as well. So we'll have straighter pieces, flatter finish, it'll work well. So as I said, just going to wait for these guys to finish with the glue, let the glue set, and then we can gut those and then assemble the whole top. So I'll be back in a few minutes when that's ready. While I'm waiting for the glue on those 2 pieces to set, I'm going to repair this. I'm not happy with it. This piece is this piece is nice, it's flush with the top. However, this piece had a warp to it and it tailed down. And as a result, that edge is out by quite a bit. That's just not going to work. There's no way filler would do that. Would just be a disaster. So what I'm going to wind up doing is cutting out this piece entirely and this piece up to that line. Then we're going to glue this piece in. So I'll set the table saw up so I can cut this. I'm going to make that initial cut down to about here. Then I'm going to make a cut with the saw blade up that'll get us about 3 inches in. Then we'll finish off that last little bit with a hand saw or possibly the little reciprocating saw, just to get that last little corner in. This cut that I'm making is doesn't have to be exact one way or the other there, so I'm not terribly worried about the precise orientation. That'll do. Now I'll finish that cut with the reciprocating saw because that lets me do a flush, keep the blade flush up against the cuts that are already made with the table saw blade. Here's our exorcism. And you can see the join that I had there. That's just not going to work. However, I'm quite impressed with even with an end joint. That's pretty strong. Took quite a bit of force to get that glue apart. So now we'll glue in this piece. And I might do just a little bit of fiddling with the fitment on this join here. So I'll do a little bit of sanding to get that right. Come back when I'm ready to glue it in. Here I'm ready to put this piece in. So I've got a clamp on the ready that'll put in here just to kind of keep them even on this this part of the join right here, and a couple larger clamps that will go here and here. Just going to give a little bit of a tap on this end to drive it that way a little bit. I can just see a little bit of glue squeeze out there, which is good. I'm just going to use a little bit of sawdust and glue to fill in that any void left over here. The sawdust also does a good job of wiping up the glue. Much happier with that join. Going to make a much better piece. So now we're just waiting for the other two pieces to set. Alright, we're back from running a couple errands and giving the glue a chance to set up. So here's our little replacement piece. Fit into this top of the table. I'm very happy with that. It's significantly better than what I had before. So any unevenness will come out with some sanding, final treatment. So we'll now move on to the assembly of the shelf. So I'll get all that set up so we can do some glue up. So I've got our pieces now laid out, our 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4. First row I've got a 1A and a 1B piece. You can see them laid there. Our second and third rows, I've got 3 pieces. This was to account for some of the warping that was in the pieces. The pieces were going like so. So 3 pieces here. Also note that I've got a B side of the blade matched up to an A side of the blade. I've done that on all of these joins, as well as the A side here on this piece. Got the A side matched up to the B side here. So these will form a nice tight fit, that perfect 180 degree fit. I've also marked lines across here to help me line up the pieces for clamping. And just to kind of give you an illustration of where the 50-inch mark is, that's how long these pieces need to be. So this piece, I've got them tape measure at the end down here. 50 inches will come here, which means that this panel can be trimmed off an inch. I have about an inch to spare here and here. Lots of room to get rid of there. And on this end, we can cut it here, and of course straight across here. So a couple inches there, a couple inches there, and a bunch of inches here. So we're getting rid of all of the blemish marks on this wood. The man-made blemishes anyway. So this is going to be some really nice material when we're done. So I'll set the camera up, get ready to glue this up. I'll probably put you on fast forward for this too, so sit back and enjoy the music. Okay, we got the tabletop all glued up. Sorry, the table shelf now glued up. So we'll call that a video for today. We're going to let this set overnight. Tomorrow, I'm going to start working on the shelf that goes underneath the drawers. So it kind of supports the drawers. That'll be made up of yellow pine. That's not going to be visible, so it is these two surfaces that I wanted to be done with this lovely Brazilian pine. Make a nicer finish. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.